Joe Biden, now the official Democratic White House nominee, accusing the president of failing the American people.
Our current president has failed in his most basic duty to the nation. He's failed to protect us. He's failed to protect America. And my fellow Americans, that is unforgivable. As president, I'll make you a promise. I'll protect America. I will defend us from every attack, seen and unseen, always, without exception, every time.
In response, President Trump coming out swinging this afternoon, the president saying Democrats held the gloomiest and angriest convention ever.
They spent 4 straight days attacking America as racist and a horrible country that must be redeemed. Joe Biden grimly declared a season of American darkness. And yet, look at what we've accomplished until the plague came in. Look at what we've accomplished. And now we're doing it again.
Let's bring in Kellyanne Conway now. She is counselor to the president. She is at the White House. Kellyanne, great to see you this afternoon. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, John.
I want to give you an opportunity to rebut the vice president's speech last night on policy. First of all, let's listen to what he said about coronavirus and then come back to you.
We'll develop and deploy rapid tests with results available immediately. We'll make the medical supplies and protective equipment that our country needs. We'll make sure our schools have the resources they need to be open, safe, and effective. We'll put politics aside. We'll have a national mandate to wear a mask, not as a burden, but as a patriotic duty to protect one another.
The vice president saying, Kellyanne, in short, he will do what the president should have done from the beginning. Your response?
It's a confounding display of the intersection of arrogance and ignorance because he doesn't know what we've done on COVID-19. Firstly, when he says it's your patriotic duty to wear a mask, he sounds like President Trump, who said it's your patriotic duty to wear a mask and tweeted out a picture of him wearing a mask and basically said, I'm wearing a mask, you wear a mask. The same week, he recognized that people can't go to the bars, places of worship, places of work, places of learning, and so he pulled down his own live in-person convention and stopped doing these big rallies as well because the president believes what's good for thee is good for me. Vice President Biden also said things that you would think somebody other than one who had been in Washington for 47 years and vice president for 8 would never be able to say with a straight face, and it's this. He's saying we need to develop PPP in the United States. Great idea, but it's President Trump who says buy American, hire American, make in America. They left us a depleted national stockpile. We didn't have enough ventilators. We went and using the Domestic Production Act and also incentivizing private Americans, private companies, John, got all this ventilator capacity so that every state that requested ventilators got ventilators. The governor of New York said we need 42,000 ventilators or some crazy number. We gave him about 4% or 14% of what he asked for, and he started giving other ventilators away,
right.
thankfully.
And I think the record
so what
on that
Biden says is not true.
Right, but I think the record on that has been well articulated. But what Biden said, which is different than the president, is a national mask mandate. He also said that he would not muzzle his experts. And I think it's fair to point out that we have not seen Dr. Birx, Dr. Redfield, Dr. Hahn, or Dr. Fauci, who I know just had polyp surgery, in public. We have not seen them at the coronavirus briefing for some weeks now. Why
well,
not?
If you haven't seen Dr. Fauci in public, you don't own a TV or a computer. You've got to be kidding me. He's a member of the task force who's out there almost daily giving interviews to many diverse outlets, and none of us has ever said, please don't do that. My seat in the coronavirus task force briefing, I'm just a staffer, is right behind Drs. Birx and Fauci, so we certainly see them. They're reporting directly to the Vice President of the United States.
They haven't been at the briefing that the president has every day.
So, and? You mean the press hasn't been able to ask them rude questions like the one that was asked by a colleague of yours from a different network of Dr. Fauci? Are you here on your own volition? I mean, what is he, Patty Hearst with the? What is this?
Let me go to another
in other
issue
words,
if I
read. Well, hold on, but this is important. Saying that Joe Biden said wouldn't muzzle the experts when our experts are on the coronavirus task force, and unlike a lot of people like Joe Biden, we were working round the clock here since March on the coronavirus task force. You know, in less time than it takes to have a baby, we have developed 6 different vaccines, and at least 3 of them are in the final phases of clinical trials in people. All of this is still a 6-month effort that we've been doing, and we've got therapeutics, vaccines, money, the strategic national stockpile. So a lot of what Joe Biden said was false. And by the way, if you have the if you have the audacity to say the president didn't protect Americans and you don't mention the violence in democratically controlled cities, you're just lying to the public.
Okay, let me move on to another issue, Social Security and taxes. This is what the vice president said last night.
And for our seniors, Social Security is a sacred obligation, a sacred promise made. They paid for. The current president is threatening to break that promise. He's proposing to eliminate a tax that pays for almost half the Social Security without any way of making up for that lost revenue, resulting in cuts. I will not let that happen.
Now, Kellyanne, the president has on at least a couple of occasions said if he is reelected, he will end the Social Security payroll tax. But it is my understanding that that is not the plan, that he's only planning to cut it until the end of the year and then forgive that tax. What is it as far as you know?
The latter is more in line of what he's trying to do. By the way, he only did this 2 short weeks ago because Joe Biden's Democratic Congress, including his Vice President Kamala Harris, won't come to work and pass another phase 4 so that the president wouldn't be forced to take executive action on his own. He announced a suspension of the payroll tax. That's a temporary thing because he wants to make sure that we keep this economy humming. In the same executive actions, John, he gave $400 extra in unemployment benefits to many Americans, and also said that you're free from evictions and you don't need to pay your student loan debt for the rest of this year. Those are big measures to help Americans with their monthly bills. Donald Trump said as a candidate the same thing he's done as president, which is, quote, he will not touch Social Security and Medicare. That's made a lot of right-wingers very upset, and he has said, I'm not touching these, I'm preserving them. And this is a president, I was on an interview with him earlier today that he gave to a biggest seniors group in the country, where he went through the entire record. Medicare premiums are down, the lowest in 7 years. He's lowered the cost of insulin to $35 maximum a month for our seniors. He's developed kidney care delivery in a very different way, which helps a lot of them who suffer from renal issues. And he has, and when it comes to seniors, the telemedicine, telehealth measures that have happened on this president's watch in the last couple of months have been nothing short of transformative. We want to make them permanent. We had about 13,000 telehealth visits by seniors before the pandemic. We're over 10 million now, so seniors can still access quality, timely care from their doctors, but through the privacy and security of their homes without risking COVID exposure. The list goes on and on. I'm happy to provide it to you.
The DNC is over now. We're looking ahead to the RNC next week. David Plouffe, who is President Obama's campaign manager, said that the president has got to reach out beyond his base. Let's listen to what he said.
He's basically continuing to dig his own political grave. And so the question is he able to change next week? Are those voters going to hear something new, something more hopeful, something more disciplined? Or are we going to hear about Hunter Biden and the election's fraudulent and Barack Obama's a criminal? Like, his base will love that. They'll cheer, and the rest of the American people are going to tune him out.
So, Kellyanne, what is the president's message at the RNC going to be about? Will it be about the future and what he will do in a second term, or will it be about Joe Biden and the Democrats?
It's a combination of the progress report of his first term and then the vision piece for his second term. And it took Joe Biden less than 2 minutes last night to lace into Donald Trump. I was a little surprised with that because all week long we heard we want to unify a broken country. We want to talk about what we're for, not what we're against. But they don't know how to beat him, but they certainly don't know how to quit him. Him being Donald Trump, the most popular 2 words said at the Democratic Convention all week were not Joe Biden, they were Donald Trump. But in this case, the president, he's got something to say about what he's done here in the 47 months, much more than Joe Biden's done in the 47 years. But Plouffe has a point that people hear, including the president, hear from me often, which is it's just this. With the exception of 1972, when incumbent President Nixon had decisive advantages in that election, from 1960 to 2016, our electorate has always gone for the presidential candidate they saw as more forward-looking, optimistic, and pleasant. They certainly did in 2016, but they did other times too when Democrats and Republicans won. People want to hear optimism. They heard a lot of negativity, a lot of invective this week. I think Jill Biden, Jill, had the most positive, upbeat speech, but she was really singular in that regard. The president just today said Joe Biden's speech at the convention was way too angry and gloomy, and he believes in the hopefulness and the greatness of America. I think you heard that out at his July 4th speech at Mount Rushmore. I think you've heard that in his polling. You heard that many times. So he will appeal to the best. The other thing is not just the message of next week, it's the messengers. We're going to show the RPI, the real people impact of the Trump-Pence administration. But for them being here, John, and these policies happening, people wouldn't have the jobs they have. The small businesses wouldn't be thriving and surviving. Individuals who are addicted to drugs or who are languishing in jail, they would not have a freer path towards their futures. And you're going to hear directly from them.
Just before we go, one quick question. The president on Hannity last night said that it was his intention to have sheriffs, law enforcement, and prosecutors at polling places. I assume that these would be people who are off duty because there doesn't appear to be any provision to have on-duty members of law enforcement there. And what do you say to Democratic charges that would be voter intimidation at the polls?
Who are they intimidating as opposed to who? The folks who give me the side eye when I tell them they're looking in the wrong registration rolls for my name. So it's not voter intimidation. I thought the Democrats agreed with us that one vote, one person, the sanctity of your vote is your constitutional right and also your civic duty. Do they not want us to safeguard these elections? They can't even figure out what they're doing. They thought they had the new Postmaster General, Louis DeJoy, on the ropes today. Instead, he just said, I haven't discussed this with the president. And by the way, people have been complaining for decades about the inefficiencies of the post office. You finally have a president who's willing to fund them, but also try to reform them, and everybody's up in arms. I thought the most important thing today in the postal conversation is a tweet that the U.S. Postal Service put out just a little bit while ago, John, where they said that they expect between September and Election Day, 2% of all the mail will be ballots, 2%. So they know that they can handle that.
Well, that is a good tee up to our next section because we will be talking with Congresswoman Debbie Dingell about all of that. Kellyanne Conway, good to see you. Thank you so much.
Give her my best. Thank you, John.
We'll
Take
see
care.
you at the RNC next week.